Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
So, a very warm welcome to everyone joining us. We're going to have a very special and interesting discussion on Bitcoins and cryptocurrency and blockchain. And we're joined by an expert and an evangelist of Bitcoins and even cryptocurrency here in India, Ajit Khurana, and his very special guest and also adorable pet, who is also named Bitcoin. Hi, Ajit sir.
Hi, my pleasure to be here. And I must say, while I have been interviewed like many times, I've lost count, but never along with the real Bitcoin, which is my golden retriever, who I'm having to attract with a treat.
By the way, why did you name your golden retriever Bitcoin? Like, do you love Bitcoin that much?
Well, so let's put it this way. It's very difficult for anybody, including my own self, to say why one was named the way one was. But I thought that when we got Bitcoin in April of 18, I thought that this doggy that we had not yet named was phenomenal. As in, this would be a life-altering experience. And then we all thought of like many names. Like, for example, you'd be surprised to know that one of the names that we may have chosen was Samosa, right? Because he has the color of a samosa. But then when we thought of Bitcoin, we thought, what could be more life-altering than Bitcoin? And indeed, this Bitcoin as well as the real Bitcoin are very life-altering for all of us concerned.
So if I say Bitcoin, will he hear me? Bitcoin?
So the thing is,
I think he's just focused on the treats right now.
But I must also add that both Bitcoins have a lot of similar characteristics. One of them is they don't listen to anyone. Second is they don't behave in predictable fashion, right? Sometimes you feel you have them under control. Some other times you feel you are under their control. So I'm having to bribe my way through, as you can see.
And that's part of this discussion and
Okay.
why I wanted to speak about Bitcoins at this point, because I was looking at the price of Bitcoins just a few minutes back. I think it's at 27 lakhs. One Bitcoin is
That is
worth.
correct. That is correct. Roughly.
Which effectively means that I can't even afford one Bitcoin. I mean, it's
Wait.
hard to believe.
No. I don't buy that. That is like saying that 1 kg of gold cost 60 lakh rupees. So I can't buy 1 kg of gold. Pretty much like nobody buys a kg of gold, right? The common person would buy a gram. Sorry for this shaking camera, but that is because my doggy has decided to settle down now. He's not getting any more treats.
All right.
So pretty much like you can take a fraction of a kg, right? Such as 1 gram, actually even less than that. You can take a fraction of a Bitcoin also. In fact, a Bitcoin is fractioned into 100 million different parts. Each part is called which is short for Satoshi. So, for instance, today there are several exchanges in India which are allowing you to buy 10 rupees worth of a fraction of Bitcoin, right? So, yes, you can buy Bitcoin. You don't have to necessarily buy a specific amount.
Got it. So we'll leave Bitcoin for a while now and focus a little bit more. Then we'll go back to visuals of Bitcoin if there's time. So Ajit sir, why did you get into Bitcoins and why did you decide to evangelize it?
Very simple. I first, frankly, heard of Bitcoin only in 2014 when it was already 5 years old. So unlike, what I like to give myself credit for, namely the fact that, I catch on trends very soon, I took 5 years to first hear about it. And when I did, I found it to be completely weird and not making too much sense. When I first heard about how some people say this is some form of digital gold or money, or the fact that, this is going to revolutionize the world, I said, no, that does not seem like it will happen. However, being open-minded, which I think is very necessary to be in the crypto sphere, being open-minded, I kept studying Bitcoin. At that point of time, there weren't too many online resources. Like the only good resource I found was published by Princeton University, two or three profs from Princeton University. And I did that online course. And it took me all the way up to September of 16 to muster enough confidence to get into the space, but then there was no looking back. As I had studied it for close to 500 hours, spread over 2 years, I realized that it was nothing but my narrow-mindedness, which was preventing me from accepting something so dramatically different and something that requires the world to be viewed very differently. Why do I evangelize it? Frankly, I don't evangelize it in the sense of, hey, you must buy Bitcoin. I don't think that would be fair, because people could make significant losses if they actually perceived Bitcoin in that way. However, I do believe that people need to think about money in a way that is original. I think that money has, in its current characteristics, become quite obsolete since decades. It is just that we haven't rethought about money. And that is why I like to popularize this thinking, and then people can make their own financial decisions.
So can we ask you how much Bitcoin you have, how much your Bitcoin assets will be worth in Indian rupees?
Okay, Regina, if you do not mind, I'm going to ask you, what is your monthly salary?
I can't.
Aha, does not seem like a question you want to answer, right? As it seems like not the right question to answer, right? Yeah, so a lot of these questions may not necessarily be the best. I can help you a little bit, because frankly, I am not important in this paradigm. I bought most of my Bitcoin, and I don't really have too much in 16, but that was at an experimental stage. Then in early 18, I actually started heading a Bitcoin exchange, or a cryptocurrency exchange to be more specific. And I did not find it right to be buying and selling Bitcoin on my own account when I'm also running an exchange. So actually, I ended up having far lesser Bitcoin than I should have or wanted to have. And for somebody who has purchased Bitcoin at a price of under $1,000, if I may use dollar as a benchmark, to now start thinking of buying it at $35,000 is very painful. Which is not to say that it may not be the best thing to do, but it becomes a little bit of a mental block. I soon may buy it though.
So if I have this right, the price of Bitcoin was around or under 1,000 or around $1,000 back in which year?
That is correct. Yeah, it was about $700, $800. It would touch 1,000 on occasion.
Oh, which year was this? Around which
This
year?
was in end 2016.
So end 2016, it was just under or around $1,000. One Bitcoin was worth that. And now in 2021, one Bitcoin is worth how much?
About 35,000.
That's a huge price rally. But before we get into that, I also wanted to understand, and most of our viewers may also want to, what is the difference between Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and blockchain? These are three separate things.
Excellent. So Bitcoin is a type of cryptocurrency. It is the most important cryptocurrency at present because of two reasons. Number one, it was the first ever cryptocurrency. And second, in terms of market capitalization, which is the value, the Bitcoin accounts for about 70%. All others, the hundreds or I don't know, thousands of others put together amount for only the remaining 30%. So it is clearly the most important one. Blockchain is the name of the technology on which cryptocurrency such as Bitcoin run. Almost all cryptocurrencies have an underlying blockchain. Actually, probably it's literally all of them. And that is the name of technology. Just like artificial intelligence is technology, cloud computing is technology, blockchain is a certain type of mechanism of storing and retrieving data in a way that it becomes immutable, which means once written, it cannot be changed, and it becomes indestructible. And most importantly, it is not set, the control of such a database is not centralized to one person or entity.
Correct. So the other cryptocurrencies, could we name a few, sir? Bitcoin is, of course, the most popular one. What are like the
absolutely
top 5 other or top 3 other cryptocurrencies that seem to be gaining some momentum?
So number 2 has always been Ethereum. Actually, its correct name is Ether, but it is commonly called Ethereum, so I'll use the common name. And that accounts for about another 10% of market share. But after you reach number 2, the number 3, 4, 5, etc. are not very stable. That means the number 3 keeps changing. Until very recently, number 3 used to be Ripple. But the US SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission, actually has come down hard and has taken a negative view of that specific cryptocurrency. As a result, it is no longer number 3. I think it has slipped to like 6 or 7 or something along that lines. Then there is Bitcoin Cash, there is Stellar, there is Tezos, there is EOS, and a bunch of others, frankly.
Wow. And that brings me to my next question. What is the Indian government's stance on cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin?
So what I'll do is I'll expand that question to mean the Indian government and institutional approach, because frankly, as far as official word from the Indian government is concerned, the only time we heard anything was on 1st of February 2018, when Arun Jaitley in his budgetary speech used 3 sentences to talk about it, and that was, according to me, the total communication we have ever got from the government of India directly. He said that it is not legal tender, which means it is not the same as coin or currency notes. Second, he says that we don't want to allow it to be used for bad purposes. I'm not using his exact words, of course. And the third is that he said that we don't want it to be part of the payment system. That means being transacted as money. This is all we have ever heard from the government of India. Of course, about 2 months after that, the Reserve Bank of India, which is not government, but still it is an institution, an independent institution, took a negative view and of Bitcoin and said that we will not allow our licensed entities, which means things like banks, payment gateways, digital wallets, credit cards, debit cards, and what have you. We will not allow them to be used for the purpose of buying and selling Bitcoin. And that did affect the industry very badly. Other than this, we hear of a lot of discussions. I myself have participated with a lot of government officials and institutions, but there have not been any official pronouncements. So I think that a reasonable view is that there is nothing illegal about buying or selling Bitcoin. It should be treated as an asset or a commodity, which means if you earn money in buying or selling of it, then you should definitely pay your tax. However, we are hoping for the government to clarify its mind, because if it wants to take an adverse action, why hasn't it done so far? And if it wants to take a conducive action and allow India to be on the forefront of this revolution, then why not just clarify it and let the game begin?
How does India feel about blockchain technology? That seems to be a little more accepted, I believe.
So blockchain technology is very related to a very similar sounding technology which Indian government has often talked about, called distributed ledger technology. Right. They may not be 100% the same, but for at least for a lay person, you could say they're the same. Now, using distributed ledger as a technology could help with everything, right from managing Aadhaar to for example, we have a council called the National Payments Council of India that could become completely blockchain driven, and a bunch of other things. Niti Aayog has talked about potentially setting up its own blockchain, which might be called the India chain. So there have been a lot of positive news about blockchain. However, I must point out that there are 2 types of blockchains. One is a blockchain which is controlled by one entity, such as, let's say, Reserve Bank of India, if it chooses to, or a consortium of several entities. In either case, it is a controlled or private blockchain. On the other hand, are blockchains such as Bitcoin, which are public blockchains, which means no entity controls them. The use cases of both of these are completely different. And the fact that it is just like having a computer on your desk versus using the Amazon Web Service. Both of them are computing technologies, but they operate very differently. Unless we develop some sensitivity to the difference between these two, and we keep calling both of them blockchain, we will not be able to harness the technology.
Understood. Could you please summarize, or if we could just simplify, blockchain versus distributed ledger system? What is the difference here?
Okay, so there isn't so much of a difference. Blockchain really is a technological feature. Distributing the ledger is one of its most common use cases, once again. So you distribute the ledger, which means, for instance, what are ledgers? Your bank account and all your bank records are a ledger. Transactions that take place in the stock market and a record of them are basically a ledger. So any book of account, you could say, is a ledger. If you distribute it in such a way that different independent entities hold on to their version of the ledger, you can create a and sorry for using a technical term, but that is the heart of it, you can use a consensus process where all these people or entities who are controlling these ledgers can decide as to what is the correct ledger. For instance, historically, and probably this does not happen in major cities, but it still happens in other parts of India, land records or land ownership registries have been a problem, wherein people do not really, as in they do not, even the government records may not always be the same as what people thought were the true land records. And that is because these records are stored at one or few places controlled by the same entity. But if they could be saved at innumerable places in a distributed ledger way, then there could be a consensus process where the majority decides what is the right ledger. To do this, you use a mechanism referred to as blockchain. Blockchain can do other things other than distributed ledger also.
Got it. And my final question would be around the Bitcoin price rallies and price crashes. It seems very unpredictable. Is that fair to say?
I think it is completely fair to say, and that is because if you look at what causes this fluctuation, right? Just by the way, pretty much like the price movement of Bitcoin is unpredictable, so is the price movement of the shares of any company that you know, or for that matter oil, or for that matter gold. How Bitcoin distinguishes itself is that its movements are far more pronounced, which means its volatility is much higher. Because if any asset class, any one of us could be able to predict the future price, we would have been able to get very rich. The more pronounced movements of Bitcoin or volatility on price, I think arises from the characteristic that Bitcoin has a very well-defined supply. For instance, exactly 6.25 new Bitcoin are minted every time a new block is uncovered in a blockchain. This happens almost approximately every 10 minutes. So that means in a 10-hour period, in a 1-hour period, roughly around 40 or 35 to 40 new Bitcoin are created in the world, which means the demand is precise. Now, the supply of Bitcoin is precise, but the demand can vary like crazy. So if suddenly institutes, funds, pension funds, corporations in the US decide to start buying and holding Bitcoin, as has happened in the last few weeks and months, that means for a given supply, you now have a significantly higher demand, and the basic principles of microeconomics dictate that this causes price to rise. But a word of caution to your viewers that the reverse also is equally true. If those who are sitting on supplies of Bitcoin suddenly start selling them off, which means the supply shoots up in the market, but demand does not necessarily change, it can also come down pretty fast. This high level of sensitivity, or as in economics you would refer to as price elasticity, this high level of price elasticity based on small movements in supply and demand are indeed what is the reason why Bitcoin is so volatile.
Ajit sir, do you recommend or suggest that someone thinking of investing or buying Bitcoin should have a certain amount of disposable income before they decide to go and invest in Bitcoins? Or can anyone do it?
So I think that, sure. So given the nature of this asset, I would recommend being cautious. Now, what does cautious mean? I don't think it requires you to have a certain net worth, because I told you there are exchanges in India that allow you to buy even 10 rupees worth of Bitcoin. So for instance, let us say even somebody in the lower middle class, I would probably, if you really are strapped for cash, I would say please put money only in assets where you can't lose your principal. But I'm just saying that 10 rupees tends to be affordable by most people. So I think it is much more a matter of what percentage of your portfolio or your disposable income or your risky portfolio do you want to allocate to it. For instance, if let us say you have decided that 10% of your investable income would be invested in the stock market. Let us just begin with that position, because that decision is yours. It's not a recommendation I am making. Now we know that you have a certain risk appetite, and probably you are at a certain stage of life where you have a certain income pattern which makes you comfortable to put 10, which is much more than 1 but much less than 50. So if that is the sort of number you have, then probably something under 1% could go into a still more volatile asset like Bitcoin. However, if the total amount of money you are putting into high risk volatility assets itself is 1%, then I would recommend a much, much smaller percentage than that. Very simply, the principles to decide this would be, number one, please put only that which you are willing to lose. And that I would say is true for all highly volatile assets. Second, accept small experimental amounts like 10 rupees, 100 rupees or 1000 rupees, depending on your net worth. These may sound like experimental amounts, except for putting experimental amounts just to see how this whole thing works. If you start putting serious amounts of money, regardless of how microscopic they may be in your portfolio, please understand this thing better. Please understand Bitcoin better, its market mechanisms better, how you can buy and sell better, and most importantly, how you store them. The market mechanisms, buying and selling of Bitcoin is actually very similar to buying and selling of various other assets such as stocks. But storing of Bitcoin, which is the custodial part of Bitcoin, is actually very different. So please make sure you understand it before you get into it. My last word on that would be that there are many reasons to buy Bitcoin. There are many reasons to not buy Bitcoin. But it should not be your closed-mindedness which prevents you from doing so. Please study it, understand it, and then based on that, if you decide not to participate in it, I'm fine. Bitcoin went up from 1,000 to 35,000. By the way, it went up from 1 cent to 35,000. Please keep that in mind. I personally don't know anybody who bought it at 1 cent, but I do know people who entered when the price of Bitcoin was 8. And I literally mean $8. $8. So it is a little more than that today, as we have already discussed earlier in this show.
Is now a good time to buy Bitcoin?
So here's the thing. I think it would be very irresponsible of me to say yes, because what if it halves like in the next 1 week? At the same time, it is also not somewhere I can say no, because the inherent characteristics of Bitcoin are very exciting. So I think that the solution to this would be very simple. If you were investing in the stock of any major corporation, which was also very volatile, like instead of naming Indian companies, I would say something like a Tesla, or a SpaceX, which is not listed, but its stocks may still be available. If you were to buy shares of a very volatile priced company, how and when should you enter? The idea is very simple, because nobody is a crystal ball gazer, though several pretend to be. You should average the price, which means suppose you have decided that over the next year, you would like to put a total of, let's say, 12,000 rupees into Bitcoin. Maybe you could divide those into 12 pieces of 1,000 rupees each and buy 1,000 rupees of Bitcoin every month, so that you capture it at various price levels and your average turns out to be in a favor. Of course, I'm not recommending that it should be 12,000. I'm not even recommending you should buy it once a month. I have heard of people who buy it once a day, because the idea of these averaging strategies is to be able to capture the fluctuation. And the fluctuation on a daily basis is so much that the averaging strategy could work. So I think that if you do want to enter Bitcoin and you just don't know the timing, and if the price is 35,000, you are worried that if I buy, it may become 20,000, but if I don't buy, it may become 75,000. If this is what is paralyzing you, as it is paralyzing several people, and I must confess, including people like me, the easiest solution is to divide your intended investment over a period and buy small rupee amounts of Bitcoin every period.
All right. Ajit, so thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing Bitcoin with us as well. Hopefully we'll get a glimpse of him a little right now, hopefully. And to our viewers, thank you very much. Hope you learned something. For The Print, this is Regina Minugula-Surya.
Yeah, so no, you're not getting to see Bitcoin again. And the reason is that Bitcoin is in nobody's control. He's gone away.